Households are critical. Firms, the second term, corporate investments in plant and equipment, are important, and they are recovering. And firms are buying lots of stuff, but they're not buying so much plant. They're buying more equipment. We'll discuss why. Government spending is G, the third term, equally critical as C. And we've seen tremendous stimulative fiscal policy coming from Washington. And that stimulative policy from G ends up moving over to C, causing households to spend more money. So we're getting all the stimulus checks essentially from G, and that's pushing C up. And we need this to continue a little bit more. We'll discuss why and how much in a couple of seconds. The last term is exports minus imports. When I saw you a year ago, I was concerned about exports minus imports because manufacturing was doing quite poorly. We were in a trade war with China, or entering a trade war with China, if you will, and manufacturing was in a recession. Right now, we have a lot bigger things to worry about than exports right now. They're going to improve a little bit, but in the short run, they're not going to do us any favors and probably pull down GDP slightly. Now, our economy has gone through tremendous turmoil, but has come out of it remarkably well. There's still a ways to go, I understand, but we have to appreciate where we've come from first. So look at automobile sales. I mean, they've really cratered, as you can see in March and April. We were stuck in our houses. We couldn't go anywhere. And then we realized, oh my God, we want to go places. Oh, we're not going to take public transit. Oh, I don't want to go on a train or a plane. Let's get a car and travel somewhere. Let's buy a recreational vehicle. That's exactly what you're seeing here. Tremendous recovery. Recoveries noted by two different things that are interesting, moving in mildly different directions. One, people who have a lot of money are buying cars. People who are really poor and lost their jobs aren't buying cars. So the average car price is going up. People want bigger cars, and people who have more money are buying cars because lower income people have dropped off. The second thing is the rental fleets aren't buying cars because, well, we're not traveling all that much by plane. Business travel is really cratered. Personal travel has done poorly, but not as badly. So good news on this front. Similarly here, this is real retail sales. Look how well it's done. My gosh, it completely craters like auto sales and then gets better and then gets ahead of where it was year over year. Even with the decline of the last couple of months, 3 months to be precise, we're still well above the year over year number. You can see where my cursor is and bringing it over year, we're way up, but we're declining. Why? We're declining because our economy slowed down. I'm going to show you several graphs, and at the end, I'll show you more that show you us that in October, the economy was strong. In November, it weakened, and in December, it weakened still, and momentum into January wasn't all that impressive. This graph shows us how much dollars we're spending on total retail sales. This shows us the change from month to month. And you can see the last couple of months, October, November, and December, not so hot because we were running out of gas. The fiscal stimulus money we got from Washington, D.C. back in the end of March 2020 had run out, and we were going on momentum, but we were slowing down. Now, if you look at the last slide on retail sales here and the one before on automobile sales, you kind of get the feeling things have totally recovered. Obviously, they haven't. Why not? Because we've changed what we buy. Our consumption of goods, as you can see in this graph, is well up over 5%. By contrast, our spending on services is down by 6%. And we spend a lot more money on services than we do on goods. We buy stuff, sure, clothing and a refrigerator or something, but most households spend most of their money on services. And you can see that the total overall net number is down by a couple percent here, 3%. And that's how much our economy is still down. So and these sectors that are in services that haven't recovered yet, that when we've gone from this terrible number back there, there's been steady improvement, but then it kind of ends, it stops. And it stops because of coronavirus, of course, because at root, this is a coronavirus problem. This is not a normal recession. In a normal recession, we stop buying goods. We stop buying cars. We stop buying RVs. And we stop buying big, expensive items. And we continue to go to restaurants and go to the hospital. Now it's the opposite. We're afraid to go to the hospital because maybe it'll kill us. So we're buying lots of stuff, not services. Really weird. But the good news is, and there's quite a lot of good news here, the number of cases of coronavirus is going down. Now, that's arguably dependent on the number of tests we perform, but the tests we perform are about 2 million a day. But moreover, more importantly, and a better measure, a really good measure, is hospitalizations. As you can see in red, they're declining dramatically as well. Death numbers will start to come down as well. This is really good news. Let's hope the Super Bowl was not a super spreader event. So coronavirus is starting to go away. Hopefully that's good news. And the big question becomes, when do we reach herd immunity? That's the big question we've got. And while no one knows this for sure, and no one even knows what the level we have to reach to get herd immunity is, this graph shows 60% of the population being inoculated. Maybe it's close to 70.
Thank you.
So my assumption is that it's somewhere in Q3 or Q4, late Q3, early to mid Q4. So say something like October. By then, maybe end of September, if we roll out the vaccinations faster, that would be very good. That would really lead to a sea change in behavior. We would stop doing this buying of goods and less services, and we would switch. We'd start to buy more services, go out to restaurants, go out to bars, go out to basketball, baseball games, and ballet, tractor pulls, whatever it is. And it would lead to more consumer confidence. Consumer confidence, as you can see, has been kind of flat for the last couple of months. It goes up because we give a vaccine. It goes down because caseloads go up. It goes up because the stock market's rising. It goes down for some other reason. Oh, the new mutations come. And these new mutations are serious. They are the biggest fly in the ointment here. We are going, the virus mutates regularly. All viruses mutate. The problem here is there are lots of people with the virus. So the virus has more opportunity to mutate more. That's the problem. And there'll be some vaccine resistant mutations. I'm sure of it. But the vaccine companies will figure it out. They can easily change their vaccines to accommodate this. But it all takes, they got to learn how to do this and so on and so forth. But we're getting better here. There's no question. The economy is improving. It's made large improvements, but some of it just can't quite get to that last little bit, just can't go because we're not going outside because we're afraid of corona. You can see it here in air travel. The numbers just for the last couple of months really haven't done much. There was some holiday stuff there, Thanksgiving, whatever, and that led to super spreader events, which led to higher coronavirus cases. But you can see the last couple of months, it really hasn't done much. It kind of peaked out here in late November or late October, early November, and been largely flat since. Look at this graph. This is public transit usage. What does it show? General improvement through, say, October, and then it peaks out, and then it stops. So you see that our economy really was bumping up and improving and improving and improving through October, mid-October, end of October. You can see it here with restaurant traffic at Open Table. This is restaurants that are open, mind you, but nonetheless, it gives you a good indication of when activity is rising and falling. And if the black line here is the US as a whole, you can see it peaked out in somewhere around middle October. And then it declines. It's improving a bit since. California has opened up their state again. But again, you can see this October was good. November, December tends to be worse. We'll see this in more data as we go through. How about working from work? That's a pretty good measure of how confident, how safe you feel in your environment. And the answer is not all that much. You can see it peaked out at a meager 27% in late October. So late October really was the peak growth period. You know, after that crazy Q3, which was just amazing, October was good, November, December, January, and hopefully Feb, March, April, May, June continue to improve. If you put all this together, the whole kit and caboodle, how does household spending do? 78% of GDP. It makes a remarkable recovery. It slows down a bit, and then it reverses. And it reverses because of the October, November, December effect, as I was talking about earlier. Remember, we had the Q3 was remarkable. Q3 is July, August, September. That quarter was remarkable, 33% annualized GDP growth. In Q4, we only had 4% GDP growth. Still good, but not nearly what it was earlier. And it kept slowing through the year. And now we're going to turn around here. If you look at this graph by month, the changes by month, you see the same thing. The last couple of months, October, November, December, November, December, January, they were just much weaker quarters. The last two negative, which you can see here in this decline over there. This is not tragic, it's understandable, but that's why we needed the fiscal stimulus that President Trump signed into law in the lame duck session in December. And why we're probably going to need more, but we'll talk about in a couple of seconds. So we've made recovery. There's been a little bit of backtracking, job losses in December, but not in January. So we're continuing to improve, and the improvement will pick up during this year. Some sectors are already absolutely on fire. Manufacturing is on fire. You can see it in this graph over here. There was this precipitous decline, and then, woo, spectacular growth, right? And they're back where they were. Manufacturers are desperately hiring people. They're rejiggering their factories to deal with coronavirus so as not to infect workers and so on, everybody there. So they rejiggered their factories, they've retrained their employees, their sales are spectacular because we're buying goods. Everybody wants a new washer, wants a new dryer, so they can hook it up with Dominion Energy or something along those lines, right? We want pavers for our backyard, we want a pergola, we want a fancy barbecue, whatever it is, right? So you see it also here in the next graph, you see it also. You see it here with factory utilization rates absolutely skyrocketing. They're tremendously high. And unlike service, the total service sector, which can't improve beyond that level, that last little bit, it can't get better. Airline travel and public transit and so on. Here, there's nonstop improvement because our demand for things is remarkably strong. We really want stuff because we can't have services. And because we can't enjoy services, we're saving more money, which I'll come back to. This forced savings. Oh, I can't go to Europe for a vacation or something. That means I have $5,000 or 3,000 or 10,000 or whatever your budget is. Oh, I can save some money and I can buy a pergola. And that's what you end up doing. What do firms? Well, how firms? Firms are also completely rejiggering their operations. And you can see it in this graph here. Look at this huge rise in firm investment in equipment. So again, not buying so much plant. Firms aren't saying, oh, we're going to expand our facilities to manufacture more, whatever it is. But we're going to make sure we can get as much as we can out of the facilities we have. If you're a hotel, if you're a restaurant, you're saying, oh, let's sign up, let people sign up online. Let's use Open Door or whatever it is. Or if you're a hotel, let's let people make reservations on their phone. If they want to open up their hotel room, let them do it with radio frequency with their phone. You want to open a bathroom door, you can do it with your phone. But all this takes time. All this takes money. Restaurants have put shower curtains between the tables. They put plexiglass sheets, right? See-through plastic. All this stuff takes time, costs money, but you're seeing it here, and it's helping our economy improve. Our economy is improving because households have learned to deal with coronavirus, because governments have learned to deal with coronavirus, and because businesses learn to deal with coronavirus. We've been at this thing now for almost a year. We're beginning to understand, unravel, open it up, figuring it out, and just plain deal with it. We also see oil prices going up. Oil prices were at the trough right here in April, somewhere in April 2020. They actually briefly hit negative prices for a day, but they hit zero essentially, $5, $10, $15 a barrel, very low prices. Since then, there's been a steady rise in the price of oil. It's now roughly $60 a barrel. And at that price, there's exploration and production going on. This is not nearly where it was before the recession begins at almost 700, but hey, it certainly beats 150 to be at over 300 now for the first time in about a year. So firms are feeling better. Firms have adapted. Oil firms have adapted. Everybody's adapting. And as a result of that, dividends are doing better. I'm going to come back to this slide in a second, but let's move ahead one slide quickly. The stock market's friggin' on fire. Interest rates are low, pushing up stocks, reducing our interest in debt and bonds, right? Corporate earnings are good. Firms are giving us pretty good guidance. You know, GM just mentioned yesterday they're doing well. Ford mentioned they're doing well. Uber and Lyft, in a very different industry and very different organizations, show their losses that have been going on for years continue to decline because they're managing. So those were four of the big ones in the journal yesterday. Things are better. They are. They're not perfect. We haven't recovered completely, but we're making big progress. And you can see it back in this slide here. Here we're showing firms and their changing of their dividend strategies. And you can look back in the terrible time of March, April, May, when we were just being bombarded and had no clue what was coming on, what was happening, what was about to happen. Firms said, whoa, let's hold back on dividend payments. Let's not make dividend payments. Let's hold our cash. Let's take down our lines of credit at banks. Let's conserve our money and not pay dividends. So you see the number of firms not paying dividends goes way up. Look here, 12, 24, 23. This is just of the S&P 500. Now, by contrast, move to the end of the year, September, October, November. Wow. Now things are pretty good again. We're getting close to normal again. Firms know they can give us forward guidance. They've been living with coronavirus through November at that point, 7 or 8 months, 9 months, and they're getting some confidence under their boots, right? They're saying, okay, we can live with this, but we still have that decline in October, November, and December. And you see it in this graph here. This is savings. This is how much, disposable income. How much income do you have? And what do you see? You see income skyrocket. This is really crazy. What happens is we go into recession and the government, Congress, the administration, the White House, Trump, whatever, Pelosi, Mitch McConnell back then, they all say, whoa, we've got to help people. There's going to be this huge slamming effect as everyone loses work and we close down the economy. Let's throw cash at the problem. And they do. They throw $2.2 trillion at the problem, a little more if you add some central bank efforts, and per capita income starts to rocket up, even though the economy is going into the garbage can. As a result, spending didn't decline all that much. Okay, it was bad in Q1. Well, Q2, we'll talk about that in a couple of seconds, but it would have been much worse otherwise, right? So, but then the stimulus money ends, the stimulus checks end, the extra money for unemployment ends, the PPP loans stop, all these different assistance to everywhere stops, and per capita income starts to slide down. It stopped sliding down in December, and now it's going to go back up in January, February, March as more stimulus checks come. Apparently, the word for the stimulus checks is stimmies, and people use them and buy They go to Robinhood and they buy, I don't know, GameStop or something. I mean, I recommend you socially distance from GameStop, but and your refrigerator, at least in my case. But you get the point. So we see this decline in disposable income. This has to have impact somewhere, right? But at the same time, we also see savings go up. It's come down a lot, but it's way up. Look at the data. So originally, prior to the recession, savings rates are about 7%, right? Where my cursor is. They skyrocket, go up by a factor of 5 to almost 35%, and then come down to about 13. 13 is still roughly double where it was. So the percent of savings has gone from 7% to about 14%. This savings accumulation now is verging on $2 trillion. That is a lot of money, and it will be a little bit more with the more stimulus money. But let's say it's $2 trillion. When things get better and things start to open up and coronavirus cases go down and injection rates go up and weather improves and close downs end, and we spend some of this savings, whoa, GDP is going to start to motor. So there's no question that Q1 may not be so great, but Q2, Q3, and Q4 are likely to be really, really good quarters. We'll discuss this in a couple of seconds. And one of the reasons is the US government has sent us a lot of money, one way or another, be it PPP loans, be it pandemic unemployment extra assistance, PUA money, unemployment insurance, topped up unemployment insurance, extended unemployment insurance. And you can see it in this graph here. The total amount of aid cumulatively is about 25% of GDP. This includes the money that's about to come, right? We're going to get that money. It's going to show up pretty soon, right? President Biden's going to pass some large stimulus bill, pandemic assistance bill, and then there may well be an infrastructure bill. Has this hurt the deficit? You better believe it's hurt it badly. You can see the deficit numbers here are as bad as they've been since literally World War II. That was 1940s, mid 40s. We're talking, 80 years ago, 70 years ago, whatever the math works out to be, right? That's a long time, but this is not the time to worry about fiscal prudence. The aim now is to get your house, get the fire, your house is burning down, get the water hose, get the house, get the fire put out, and then install low flow toilets everywhere to save water. Don't save water by not putting out the fire, dousing the flames. In terms of exports, the dollar's weakened. That's been somewhat helpful. As you can see here, the dollar's weakened vis-a-vis other currencies. That's going to help exports a bit. but not a lot, because the biggest thing the U.S. exports is services. We export education. Foreigners come here to go to school. That's considered an export. Tourists come here to bring hard money to the U.S. That's considered an export. We export music and movies, but movie houses are closed. And the biggest thing we export is Boeing. And Boeing airplanes, they've they have problems on their hands. I think due to gross mismanagement, but we could, I suppose, argue about that. But I think it really is gross mismanagement. But you put it together, this is what you've got. You had Q1 at 4% growth, pretty decent. Q4 last year, end of 2020, Q4, 4% growth. But it was declining as the quarter went through. So October was the best, then November, then December, say 6%, 4%, 2%, or 5, 3, 1. It's about 5, 3, 1, probably better. Then we enter Q1 of 21 on a real weak note. But we know there's lots of stimmies coming. We have the Trump stimmies coming, and now we have the Biden stimmies about to come. You put essentially $3 trillion into the economy, 900 billion under Trump, and now 1.9 trillion under Biden. That's almost $3 trillion. I mean, this has got to have some massive impact on the economy. We can argue too much. Maybe it's not a good thing. Maybe it causes inflation. Maybe we're overdoing it. But in the short run, certainly this is going to be a great year. There's no question about it. And if you look at it across the board, this is year-to-year changes. You can see that 21 is going to be a good year. We're going to grow it, 5% probably. I think this is probably an underestimate right now because this extra stimulus money is going to be coming. So we're going to have good growth. There's no question. So GDP actually will recover from where it was prior to the pandemic by the end of Q2. So we were here before the recession starts. We fall precipitously, we recover, and we're back up by the end of Q2. That's a really good thing. Labor markets aren't going to improve nearly as quickly. And that's why the Democrats now are pushing very hard for more stimulus money, because they're saying, and with reason, that if we don't do anything and let things just go as they do, while GDP will recover, I would have said by the end of Q3. Now I'm saying by the end of Q2 because of the added stimulus that's about to come. Labor markets would probably take 2.5 more years to recover, at least 2 more years to recover. It's a lot longer. And labor markets aren't as strong as we think they are. It's not helping construction because there's no unemployment in construction, but elsewhere, things aren't as good as they appear. This is total employment. Let's have a look. So we start out prior to the recession here. We fall down to here, losing 22 million jobs. We then rapidly recover and pick up 12 of them. We're still 10 million jobs short. That's a problem. And you can see here the numbers actually decline a little bit at the very end. What is going on? What's going on is our economy was weakening. Labor markets were softening, and you can see it here. You see here, we created almost 3 million jobs in May, 4.5 million in June, a couple million in July, August, September, October, November, and then in December, we actually lost jobs. And they revised the decline downwards, now negative 144,000 jobs in December. In January, we gained 49,000. But in the last 2 months, we're down 100,000 jobs. Not a lot of jobs, obviously, but if you want to grow 10 million jobs, this is the wrong way to do it. And even if you were to gain 200,000 or 300,000 jobs a month, it would take 3 years to get all these jobs back. So we've lost a lot of jobs, but it's worse than you think. Here's why. This is the unemployment rate officially in blue solid. But there are two, not errors. There's one error and a problem. The error is misclassification in the dark black line. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has just mashed this data up. They admit it, and in every press release they say it, that they're incorrectly counting various people who are unemployed or they say they're on temporary furlough and they're considered unemployed, and there's some errors there in the coding. That pushes it up a little bit. But then a lot of folks have simply dropped out of the labor force. You can see it on the next graph, which I'll show you, and come back to this graph. Look at this. Look at the prior recession. It may have declined, but nothing like that The prior recession, no noticeable decline. But this recession caused a tremendous drop in the number of people actually working or looking for work. If you don't look for work, you're not considered unemployed. You can see it comes back about 40% and then it stagnates. It stagnates in large measure because people are afraid to go back to work because they'll get coronavirus, and kids aren't going to school. And if kids don't go to school, it turns out mommy stays home. Daddy goes to work, mommy stays home. So women can't go to work, kids don't go to school, employers can't find people. The end result is the unemployment rate is actually higher. If those people who are home because they don't want to be home, but are home because they're afraid or because their kids can't go to school, you get an unemployment rate that's closer to 8 or 9%, 9%. Now, some of that will go away when the schools open, of course, and coronavirus goes away. But there's still a lot of workers here. We lost 10 million jobs, but if you compare the number of unemployed a year ago, it was 5 million, to what it is today is 10 million. That means roughly 5 million people just plain old dropped out of the labor force. So we have a lot of work to do. The unemployment rate in the last recession that we had in 8-9 for housing, it began earlier in 2006, that peaked at 10. We're right now at probably 8.7 because of the misclassification error and because of this still nearly 2-point decline in the labor force participation rate. The other problem that we have in the labor market is there continues to be staggering amounts of turmoil. Let's unpack this graph here. So prior to the recession, on the far left, at the very bottom, what you see is losses weekly, job losses, people getting pink slips, getting fired, 200,000 jobs a week. If the US economy loses less than 300,000 jobs a week, economists like me are very happy. That means we're creating net new jobs because net new job growth is about 325, 350 a week. So if you're losing 300,000 jobs a week, you're creating 100 to 200,000 net new jobs. Great. At these lower levels, it was even better. Absolutely terrific. But what you see is this massive increase. We went from losing 200,000 jobs a week to 7 million jobs a week, an unbelievably large number. Then it comes down, great. But you can see the last 5-6 months, it hasn't gone down at all. It's stuck at around 700,000 or 800,000 a week. That's why it's hard for us to create jobs. Because if you're losing 800,000 jobs a week, you've got to create 4 times that for 4 weeks and an extra half a week more. That's 3.5 million jobs. That's a lot of jobs you have to create. If you aren't losing so many, you can create that many and suddenly create lots of jobs. That's where we want to get. To give you a perspective on how bad this number is, prior to the pandemic here, right, prior to mid-March, the worst number in the history of this series that I'm showing you, going back to the beginning of the series in the earlier mid-60s or late 60s, was 695,000 for 1 week in 1982. Since then, it has never been that low since hitting that peak of 7 million. None of these weeks here has it been lower than the prior record. These are all new record-breaking numbers. Firms open, they close, they hire, they fire, they hire, they furlough, they hire, they furlough, they close, they open, they reopen, they close, they have outdoor dining, they don't have outdoor dining, you get the idea. Now, the big saving grace for home builders is education. Look at the unemployment rates by education. The number of unemployed, the percentage, the rate is really low if you have a college degree, in yellow. If you have some college, you're green. It's better, but it's flattening. If you have a high school diploma, it's still declining, but really high. And if you have less than high school, it is profoundly high. So this recession, like other recessions, is the impacts are very much unevenly distributed, with a major impact being on less educated, because you can work from home if you have more skills. If you're a professional, you're more likely to work from home. If you speak English, you're more likely to work from home. If you're older, you're more likely to work from home. You put all those together, and those people are probably college graduates. I'm sorry. Now, let's talk about inflation. It's a big concern, and there's quite a lot of struggle in the economics profession to try and figure out what's going on with inflation and where it's going more accurately. And will this added stimulus coming now from President Biden on top of what came from President Trump in December, you can forget the stuff in March, that's already worked its way through the economy, except in some elevated savings rates among higher income people. And some of those increased savings rates for higher income people aren't because of stimulus checks. It's because they weren't going to Europe or doing some fancy trips or something along those lines. This is wages, all wages, total compensation, benefits and wages. I don't see a lot of inflation coming. Wages are the single biggest things firms spend on, right? If they're a manufacturer, they have raw materials, obviously. If they're a services provider, they don't have so much raw material stuff. They may have a nice facility, a hotel or something, but wages are a huge part. Unless wages start to go up, it's very hard to see permanent increases in inflation. It really is. So I would watch wage growth like a hawk. Are we going to have bottlenecks here and there? Yeah, of course we're going to have bottlenecks. That's obvious. But we're not going to, but bottlenecks aren't permanent. They last for a month or two or three or four, and they go away, and then prices come down. Higher prices, sure, but that doesn't lead to sustained year over year price increases. Wage increases do. Oh, inflation's bad, so wages go up. Wages go up, that pushes inflation. Inflation's up, wages go up. But you get this cost pull inflation, if you will. So this is the inflation data. This is CPI, what you think of as inflation. Do you see any friggin' inflation here? No. If you look at the blue headline, including all items, goods and services, no inflation. And if you look at blue, which excludes food and energy, because food and energy bounce around because of, war and drought, right? Wars, energy costs go up because we're afraid the Middle East, something the Straits of Hormuz or Bab el Mandab, or one of those places that all the oil tankers go through. They lob a missile or something. Woo! Prices jump 10, 15 bucks a barrel. So economists ignore that, right? You see inflation in the red. The red's the more important one. That's the core. This is data through the end of December, right? Nothing. This data is even more recent. This was data came out 10 days ago for this one. Same thing. This is core. This is PCE. What the Fed looks at when they look at inflation. Does the Fed see inflation? We're all worrying about inflation, but we don't see it yet. This one, this one came out actually the day before yesterday. No inflation. This is literally the day before yesterday, the 10th of February. So we have January data here. Nothing here either. This is the Fed's favorite measure. The Fed wants the red, core, PCE, to be 2%, actually a little above 2%. It hasn't been 2% except for 8 or 9 years ago and there for a few months. And what did the stupid Fed do? They started jacking up rates in 2018. What happened to housing in 2018? And then in 19, they went, whoops, we raised rates. Let's reduce rates. So they cut rates and housing went, wee! So 18 and 19, entirely interest rate driven phenomena because of an increase in the interest rates. Now, because of fear of inflation. Now, let me give you an example of inflation and tell you why I'm not worried about it. When we used to go to work, we used to go to the bathroom at work and we used toilet paper. And firms bought toilet paper. Now that we're at home, we buy toilet paper for ourselves. Interestingly enough, the cost of toilet paper has gone way up. Why? Twofold. First, firms bought toilet paper in huge bulk quantities. Yeah, I can go to Costco and buy a pack of 40 rolls of tea paper. But when you're a company, you can buy a roll of like 400 or 4,000. Price per roll goes down. So the cost per roll was cheaper because just bulk purchases. And firms didn't care about our derrieres. They let us use sandpaper. But now that we're wiping our own derrieres, we go, whoa, let's buy virgin pulp. We buy much higher quality toilet paper. This has caused inflation in toilet paper prices. But it's a one-time event. We've gone from cheap, crappy toilet paper to good quality toilet paper. And that's it, we're done. Now, if we go back to work, maybe the firms will use the crappy stuff again and prices actually will come down. There's been a one-time increase in prices, agreed, but that's not going to lead to another increase and another increase. It's once and done. We may see a bunch of that here and there for a while, and we may see in opposite direction as well. The cost of goods is likely to fall because we're going to be buying fewer goods and more services. Restaurant meals may go up, but the cost of pavers and lumber may go down because restaurants aren't going to be using any more lumber to make outside facilities for eating anymore. So I'm not convinced there'll be inflation. I'm not convinced there won't be, but I'm not convinced there will be. If you look at the trimmed mean, throwing away the stuff that went down in price and the stuff that really went up in price, no evidence of inflation there either. This is, again, really recent data. How about people say, Elliot, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Look at the money supply. It's way up. That means we're going to have inflation, right? Didn't Milton Friedman say inflation is everywhere and always a monetary phenomena? So the money supply is rocking like it hasn't rocked before. No, 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 because look, the velocity of money is collapsing. So the government's giving us money and we're taking the money and we're sticking it in a desk drawer or under our mattress. That money is dead as far as the economy is concerned. If that money starts to get spent, that's why there's fear of inflation later in the year starting, because we're going to have more stimulus money and extra savings, pent up demand, vaccinations, herd immunity, better weather. Maybe we get it. I think we get a one-time blip up and then it goes down again and the Fed essentially ignores it. I could be wrong, but that's the argument you have to have in your head to make head or tail of this discussion. It's not the toilet paper increase once. No one cares about that. Now, the market thinks there's going to be inflation. No question about it. You can see it here. This spike up certainly is suggested, but the market was wrong here. The market was wrong there. The market was wrong there. And the market was wrong there too. The market's been wrong essentially for 40 straight years on inflation. Inflation is probably bottom, but how fast it goes up remains to be seen. And I don't think the Fed's going to let it get out of hand. If you're old, like over 55 years old or over 60, and remember the inflation of the 70s and the 80s, you're a different breed than the youngsters who are 30 or 40. They have no recollection of this inflation. So it doesn't matter. They're not perturbed by it like older people are. So there's a very much of a generational effect going on too. You can ask the Japanese about this during Q&A. We can talk about this briefly. So this is my expectation for interest rates at the short-term Fed funds level. You can see it stays flat until the end of 22. And this is my expectation for the 10-year Treasury, ending this year at 1.5 and next year at 2. Now, the Fed can't raise rates right away. Even when the Fed wants to begin to raise rates, remember, they're buying for $80 billion a month of treasuries and $40 billion of mortgage-backed securities, home mortgages from Fannie and Freddie. They have to begin to lower these purchases first. And before they can lower those purchases, they have to tell us they're going to lower those purchases. The last time that happened in 2013, when Ben Bernanke was head Fed, he said, oh, we're thinking of reducing our purchases of quantitative easing, our treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. And there was something called the taper tantrum, followed immediately. Interest rates jumped up by an entire percentage point in about 2 or 3 months. It did a lot of damage. Anything with the word tantrum, it cannot possibly be good. So Powell, head Fed now, has to tell us he's going to taper, actually begin to taper, and only then can he lower rates. Whoa, this is not happening tomorrow. He will let the economy run and he will try and damper inflation and interest rate hikes by buying maybe more treasuries and mortgage-backed securities or more longer dated treasuries and mortgage-backed securities to influence and fiddle around with the long end of the yield curve. So I don't see this being a problem too much for now. Later, maybe, but I'm not convinced. Now, let's talk about housing. Housing is the best sector in the entire U.S., bar none. No question about it. If you look at overall construction activity, you can see it here. Res construction, rocks, and all other kinds of construction, whatever they are less than they were before the pandemic began. There are some if you cut it even more finely, you can see some upward trends, but very few. Cold storage and cell phone towers and stuff. Now, there's a catch. So not only are you smart and not only are you good looking, but you're in the best sector of the entire US economy. Congratulations. But there's a catch. Look at this data. This shows you first-time mortgage applications from the Mortgage Bankers Association data. And you can see it looks great. But let's revise how we look at the data. This is 30 years of data. Let's look at every year and just stack them one on top or one below the other, depending on the year. What we see here is 2020 starts out great, where my cursor is light blue. And then we have the recession and the lockdown, and it crashes. April and May. And then end of April, so March and April. End of May, early May is the bottom. And then things begin to improve and improve and improve and improve. And wow, do they improve. But then they stay there. They don't go up anymore. Compare the light blue 2020 But the prior year, here in this color, yellow or brown, whatever it is, the gap between 20 and 19, between 20 and 19, between 20 and 19, between 20 and 19 is fixed. The last half of this year, last year was great. It doesn't get better than that. Now, let's look at this year. Last year was in light blue. This year's in dark blue. The gap is as big now as it was here. That means come June, there'll be no more improvement. We'll be at where we are. This dark blue line will stay where it is and meet up with the lighter blue line. Year over year increases will be zero at that point. We were traveling before the recession here at 60 miles an hour. Great. We fall to 30, we go to 100, and we stay there. I will show you this graph 4 or 5 more times and convince you that I'm right of this one. It cannot get better than it was. It can get worse, but it cannot get better. What's being sold now? This is fancy houses that are selling over, 700,000. Builders are building big homes. People are moving from cities to suburbs and exurbs, building big homes, buying big homes. Big homes, people want more space. They need more from their house. Their house has to provide them with educational facilities for their kid, a Zoom room for work, a jogging exercise room, Peloton room for exercise. Well, you need more out of your house than you did before. Let's look at existing sales. This is 18, rates went up, they went down. 19, rates went down, so sales went up. Then 2020 begins well, goes into crash mode, recovers like the phoenix out of the ashes, and then it stopped. Look here, same thing. Look at year over year. Good beginning, weak March and April, recovery in May, June, and July, and then it's kind of fixed. That's it. There's nothing friggin' to sell. Look at the inventory on this page. Look at that inventory, 1.1 million or 1.07 million from the Realtors Association. This is a quarter of what it was at the peak back in 06. It's not seasonally adjusted, so we should compare a January number. So right around January here, we're looking at 3 million. Here we're looking at closer to 3.7 million. I mean, these are crazy numbers, right? We're down by at least 2/3, nothing. How about builders? Builders are going bonkers. They're as happy as they can be. Daniel mentioned it, that the NHB Wells Fargo index hit 90 in October or November. I think I have a slide, I'll show it. The highest builders have ever been. Builders are friggin' happy because they can sell anything they make. The problem is they can't make enough, and they forgot to build homes for 10 years. Daniel must have been like on vacation through 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. He figured, I can't be bothered building homes. I'm joking, of course, but look at the data. You can see the housing boom, the housing bust. And then even here we are in 2016. We're massive. This gap of underbuilding here, massive underbuilding, is about 5 million units. And that's the crux of the problem. We're massively underbuilt. There's no inventory. Prices go up. You want to build more, but you can't. We'll get into why in a couple of seconds. Now, let's look at this data and compare it to last year. Let's compare 20 to 19, like we did here, like we did here. We're going to now do it for starts. Here you go. Housing starts. Look at this. Jan and Feb were great months. Interest rates were low. Weather was calm and peaceful and mild. Things were stupendous. March was still good enough, because the lockdown only began second half of the month. April and May were in the garbage can. June gets good, and then July you're off and running. But look at the gap between the red and the blue every month. Okay, the gap, I care, but the gap is pretty big, no gap, pretty nice, a little smaller. But here, look at all the last 6 months. The gap is roughly that big physically, right? You look at the September, the October, the November, they're kind of normal gap. A little less in December, a little more in August. There's something to that gap declining, actually. First, December of 2019 was great, just like January 20 and Feb 20 were good, making the year-over-year comparison hard. And builders simply can't build more homes. Look at the next data. Now, there's a change going on between single and multi. You can go back to this slide and see it here. Single is rocking. Multi is going nowhere, because no one needs multi because it's high density. No one wants high density structures in the middle of a pandemic, right? So we're not building multi, we're building single. Great. But how much are we building? This is overall starts. You can see the gap between the blue last year, 2020, and the year before, 2019 in brown, the gap is pretty flat. There was one outlier there in August that was remarkably low. But if you push August up, July, August, September, October, November, the gap was pretty fixed. Builders can't build more homes. You can't, realtors can't sell more homes. Mortgage brokers can't make more first-time mortgages. We're all capped out. Now, single family has gone up. You can see it here. But year over year, the gap is beginning to decline. Those two big bump ups there. If you take those bumps down, the line is kind of flat. It's a little bit going up, but there's a catch. The catch is these lines, this data is based on sales of new homes, right? Sales of new homes, starts. We'll look at sales in a second. Let me get on with that one. So here's starts, sales. Sales have done great. They're terrific, but there's a catch here too. They go up, 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 up. That was the best prior to the recession. They crash in the recession. Then they boom out of the recession, and then they come down a bit. They come down a bit. Let's look at the data year over year again, like we have already for starts, and we have for sales, and we have for mortgage apps. Ta-da! The same thing again. Jan, Feb are great. March and April are horrible. May, June, July are tremendous recovery. July, August, September, and then what the hell's going on there? They're down. Why? Because when a house is sold, that's when the buyer makes the contract with the builder. But the builders are so backlogged at this point, they're telling buyers, yeah, give me your money, I'll build you a house, but not till 2023. So the gap, the number of homes that have been sold, not started, or homes that have been sold and not completed is skyrocketing because there aren't enough people. That's why you can't build more homes. So you build 1.3 million homes in 19. You build 1.4 million homes in 20. Maybe you build 1.5 million homes in 21. I'm really optimistic you get 100,000 new homes built this year. You may not get that many. You might get only 50 or 60. It's going to be hard. So the builders are really, really happy. You can see it here. You know, if I was talking in Colorado like I was last week, I would tell you that the builders are probably smoking, you know, but it's not legal in Virginia. I don't recommend it. Never, ever, under any circumstances, do it. And look at this. Builders have no inventory. Builders are smart. They've learned their lesson. And let's unpack this graph really carefully. So at the peak of the global financial crisis, there were almost 600,000 units for sale, inventory. Now, this inventory is composed of three parts. It's composed of built, not sold in red. So you're dying there. Being built, not sold in blue. Normal spec house that will be sold soon, hopefully. And green, permitted, but not started. So it doesn't really matter. Look at the number now. Now it's barely 300,000, so roughly half. Existing inventory is down by 2/3. New inventory is down by half. But now unpack the graph more carefully. Look at the red and look at the blue. The red is virtually non-existent. The number of red homes built but not sold is now as low as it was 12 or 13 years ago in the pit of the recession, and lower than at any other time anywhere else. Someone that's putting some lines here very conveniently, a guy named Mark Mitchell. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. I don't even know how to do that, but you know how to do that. So you can keep doing it. It's okay. I'll give you a shout out again. But you can see this tremendous decline in red. The fact there's no red homes mean builders are pulled back dramatically, and they're not taking chances. They've learned their lesson from last time, because these red houses caused all the builders to go belly up. And that's why now there are literally half as many builders as they were. Over the last 10, 12, 13 years, nobody went into home building. The average age of home builders, I'm sure, is much higher than it was because everybody's left, right? There are half as many builders, half as many contractors, half as many roofers and plumbers and carpenters. You cannot expand. You have a bottleneck here. And that's why home starts won't increase by more than 100,000 this year. Now, certain cities more than others, yeah, of course. Look at the inventory of new homes going up again. There's no need to build more homes. You're building as fast as you can. That's the right level. You're okay. And as I said earlier, the reason is we're short by 5 million homes. Thank you very much. Because builders never got the memo to build homes back in 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I mean, they couldn't. There was no money. Banks wouldn't lend. I mean, it's not your fault. Don't get me wrong. I'm joking here, right? But the situation was such that we're short 5. I mean, population was still going up in 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, but no homes. Suddenly now rates are low. People want a house and there's nothing to buy. There's chronic big demand, no supply. The home builders tell us that regulatory burdens have raised the cost of a house through, this is from 11 to 16. I'd like to see a new report from them. Maybe they put it out. I haven't seen it. That regulatory costs the builders face are very, very oppressive. So that's land. That's land use, essentially. This is labor. Unemployment in construction, res construction's back where it was. Look at the total employment before the recession and now after. Look at construction here in specialty residential trades, red before and after. There's no decline. The only decline in the sector is if you look at all construction, it went from here to there, because that includes commercial, industrial, and all kinds of power and manufacturing and whatever. There's been a decline. So there aren't enough workers, just like it was before the recession began. Construction workers, construction firms are back in the same soup. And reno has done well because people don't like where they live. They may hate their children. They may hate their spouse. They may hate their house. They can easily fix their house. The other ones are much more difficult. So people are spending lavishly on doing reno work. And reno, we'll spend $50,000 on a kitchen and $25,000 on a bath. We'll put on a pergola, we'll put out pavers, and we'll redo this and have an outdoor yard. Maybe we'll have a pool because we can't go outside because of coronavirus. Lumber prices have skyrocketed. You have high lumber prices, lack of labor, lack of land, renovation work, not enough new people going into the industry. Whoa, that's a problem. But that said, this is a great time to be a builder. Demographically, things are terrific. The number of people edging into home buying at age 34, the yellow line, is really high. This cohort here, 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 and here, these 5 cohorts are gigantic. That's like 10, 12 years of home buyers that are on the verge of moving in. Credit has been very hard to get since the recession began. It will get easier, driving more people in. Interest rates may go up a little bit, but they're really low. Low interest rates, good demographics, easier credit access, and thinking about a home in a whole new way. We now value our homes much more highly than we did, and home prices keep rising. Waiting to buy a house is not a good idea when home prices are going up, right? What's the fly in the ointment? The fly in the ointment that I see is potentially forbearance. But I don't see that being much of a problem either. First, the number of people in forbearance continually is declining, right? Overall number here is 5.35%, about 2.6, 2.7 million households. A, not so many, going down. B, C, President Biden just extended the forbearance period 3 more months. So it doesn't end of March. It now ends end of April, May, end of June. So we're about up to July 1 now before it happens. The economy will improve, and they may well extend it again. But lastly, these homes, there's home equity in these homes, right? That's really important to remember. 12, 13 years ago, there was negative equity, and it was falling every month. The lender wanted to sell the home fast, throw out the person living in it, and sell the house. Now it's a very different story. So I'm much more optimistic that this is not going to be a problem. Now, let's wrap it up with 4 or 5 slides, and we'll take questions for a couple of minutes. First, the economy is slowing. This is October data. The darker the color, the better. Darker blue is the best. You don't want the yellow color. Dark blue. Look at the next month, November. It's lighter. Look at December. Lighter. Let's go again. Dark, lighter, lighter. Not so good. The economy was slow, and we need to see it turn around. It will start because of all the stimulus money coming. Next, let's see where population growth has been best. The darker the color, the better. Darkest green is the best. On the East Coast, Florida is the unequivocal winner, with runner-up status to Georgia and the Carolinas, and honorable mention to Virginia, Tennessee, and Massachusetts, right? Those are all low-tax states. All of these are low-tax states, with Florida no income tax at all. Mass is the only one with a high income tax state, and they have all the education going on there, right? High tech and stores. Out west, you can see it's the Intermountain West and Texas with good performances there and pretty good performances overall. People are moving west. They're moving west, they're moving south, and Virginia's sort of at that spot where it's further south enough, right, to capture people. So keep it up. Keep it up. You're in a good spot. In terms of actual construction activity in Richmond, single fam in red was pretty flat. And in the last couple of months, it's gone absolutely haywire. Good for you. Multifam for a while had been picking up some of the slack, but there hadn't been a lot of overall construction going on. But single fam since the recession started has gone up like crazy. Last but not least, house prices are doing pretty well. As you can see here, they're 15% up from the prior peak, and they're 40% up from the trough that was there. All right, let's hope we have time for Q&A. First, thank you to the big sponsors here. Not obviously, you can see here the biggest sponsor here. And also, don't forget Dominion Energy. This is my name, cell number, phone number, Twitter handle, email address. I put out 70 words on the economy every day. No graphs, no ads, no charts, no links, no photos. If you want to get it, you can email me at elliot@graphsandlaughs.net. Go to my website, econ70.com, 70 words on the economy. Or more easily, text using your phone. Text the word bow tie, right? With D.R. Horton on it, to the 5-digit number 22828. You'll be prompted for an email address. You'll hear from me every day till you die. Bow tie, one word, no hyphen, no space. Let's try and take a couple of questions. I hope so. Sign up for my blog, 22828, bow tie, and we'll be set. I'm going to stop sharing, and I look forward to talking, or not.
Thank you, Dr. Eisenberg. This is Elizabeth, staff here at HBAR. Appreciate this very informative presentation. At this point, we have one question for you. We have a question on what are your thoughts about Zillow purchasing Showtime for $500 million?
Now, these are all reasonably well understood long-term processes. The way houses are sold and the way houses are showed is changing, right? CoreLogic was just sold last week as well. They're another data provider, a lot of housing data, a lot of other agricultural and geospatial data also. But this is just a sign of the times. There are economies of scale here involved that are very important. These firms have to get bigger to do better and compete with other big behemoths, and they need more money. And the way the world is working is infiltrating, if you will, the home sales side of it. Building hasn't changed so much, although that probably will slowly change as well. But the sales side, everything about that side has changed. Showing and flipping, what these firms are now buying and selling properties themselves, buying, renovating, and selling, trying to make money there, and making money along the way. So if you list with us, then you get insurance with us, and you get closing services with us, and they make money on all those ancillary services as well. But economies of scale are very important.
Okay, great. Well, I have some more questions that are rolling in. Folks want to know if you can talk about the likely effect on jobs and otherwise the economy with the efforts to increase minimum wage to $15.
Whoa, great question. I'm not a big fan of doubling the minimum wage. That's a lot of money, right? I think that's probably a poor idea. I mean, you want to raise it $1 or $2 or $3. I mean, remember, the minimum wage was last raised back in 2009, if I'm not mistaken. Had inflation just taken its toll and had we bumped it up to keep the purchasing power flat from where it was, it would now be 9. So if you want to bump it to say 10, I wouldn't, jump up and down, and I wouldn't worry all that much. And there's been some seriously good quality data in the economics profession that has convinced people like me that raising the minimum wage, small amounts, albeit not doubling, doesn't seem to have nearly the deleterious effects we thought it had. So I have been slowly changing my opinion in the face of good research. Now, doubling the minimum wage is a whole new story. That's a big increase. And states like Virginia, where you have large metropolitan high-cost areas like Northern Virginia, Richmond, and Tidewater, right? Those are the 3 most expensive areas in the state. And then you've got the rest of the state where things are much, much cheaper. Same in the country. Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, New Mexico, they're much cheaper states than New York, California, Massachusetts, and Oregon or something, or Washington State, right? Or New York City or DC. So this is really not a great idea. What will firms do? Firms will reduce the amount of labor they use. They will substitute towards capital, and we'll probably lose 1.5 million employed people because they're not going to be worth about $15. I would have liked to have seen at least some semblance of, okay, how about a training wage of 6 months or something, or 1,000 or 2,000 hours or something at a lower wage. But you got to hire a high school kid at $15. That gets pretty expensive. The lure of technology is greater. So you always have this trade-off. Higher wages will help some people and bring some people out of poverty at the cost of reducing total employment. Will we get over this? Yes, we will rejigger our economy. Our economy is big, and we will deal with it, but it will certainly have implications. It will raise wages for workers at the expense of corporate profits a little bit, which means spending goes up, not altogether in the short run, certainly a terrible thing, but it'll cost at least 1.5 million jobs, maybe 2 million jobs nationally.
Great. You mentioned in your presentation some of the regulatory burdens and how those impact cost. Do you have any recommendations for uh, s- solutions to address the regulatory burdens that this industry faces?
Wow, they're very hard. When I worked at the home builders, that's what we spent a lot of time working on, was trying to show policymakers, legislators at the state, local, and national levels, hey, don't do that. It's going to raise the cost of housing. Don't you want your kids and grandkids to live nearby or be able to live nearby? How places that don't build homes like California and Massachusetts, home prices go up really, really fast, making it unaffordable for so many. It's hard. People, once you buy the house and you pay a lot of money for your house, you really don't want more houses being built near you, because more houses increase supply, lowering price pressures. So you have this very negative feedback effect here, where the house becomes the most expensive thing you've ever bought. The house price is very high. You want to protect your investment by preventing other people from getting the house. So the politicians hear from these homeowners saying, don't build more homes. Don't let more homes be built. It's very hard. You have to get courageous politicians, give them cover, help explain to them the story, and offer to help work with them in a campaign so that they don't get all the bullets and lose their job necessarily, right? It's
Right.
a hard road to travel here, but it's one that's critically important. And you look at states like Florida and Texas, where housing is relatively inexpensive and income taxes, personal income taxes are low. They're hoovering up population. People are moving there left, right, and center. And Georgia, the Carolinas on the East Coast. So if you don't want to do one, at least do the other. Lower your taxes dramatically.
Wonderful. Well, another question, speaking of prices, if you have any insight into the driver and the cost of lumber.
Wow. Okay. So I've done some digging in the cost of lumber, because like everybody else, I'm amazed, shocked, overwhelmed, and confused. There were a lot of lumber mills shuttered back in 6, 7, 8, 9, both in the Northwest, so Washington, Oregon, British Columbia, and in the South, right, Louisiana, Georgia. And those lumber mills, you can't just flip a switch and turn them on. Suddenly demand goes up, and wow, we're drastically undersupplied. On top of that, there are tariffs on lumber from Canada. Really stupid idea, right? They need to get rid of those entirely. We've imposed tariffs 3 or 4 times on Canada. Eventually, they go to court. Canada always wins. But in the meantime, builders and buyers are shortchanged. And on top of that, there's been increased demand from stores and restaurants building temporary situations for dining and stuff. Home renovation's been going on. And the lumber companies aren't convinced this increase in demand is permanent. And they don't want to increase the supply of lumber all that much. So you've got some factors that will go away necessarily. The restaurants will stop buying lumber, as they've already done it. Renovation will go down, as we've already done some of that. When we stop buying so much housing and serve goods, there'll be less demand. But this is a bit of a concern. The prices are going to stay elevated for a while.
Great. Well, we got one last question, and we have someone who wants to know if the new administration passes, a path to citizenship for undocumented workers. How will the millions of new citizens affect the housing and building industry?
At the margin, they will certainly help. I mean, these are people who've already been here, right? I'm not sure which group of people this person's talking about. Is it all the 11 million or just the DACAs? If it's the DACAs, of course, it's a smaller, 1 million or 1.5 million. I'm not exactly sure. If it's all of them, it's 11. Let's assume it's the bigger numbers will have more effect. That will certainly help. Once they know that they're legal, they're more easily able to open a bank account. They're more easily able to go to college, get some education, improve themselves, get higher wages, and become more permanent, buy a house, rent a bigger apartment, buy a condo, buy a small place, whatever. This will unequivocally have beneficial impacts. It'll also make the supply of labor easier, because they won't be fearful of getting picked up and sent back to Guatemala or wherever it is. So at the margin, it won't be huge, massive help, but it will certainly be a help. These people will invest in themselves. And by investing in themselves, they'll help the US economy overall. And they don't even have to become citizens here. I'm not making a political comment here, don't get me wrong. They need some way to know that they're safe and they're secure, and their existence here is not tenuous.
Right.
That would
Great.
get the economic benefit that I'm talking about.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Eisenberg. I think that concludes our Q&A. And at this point, I'll turn it back over to Daniel.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Dr. Elliott. I came away with amazed, shocked, lost, and confused. I'm going to start using those adjectives and verbs in our HBAR meetings. So thank you. We're going to wrap this up with our top 10 builders for 2020. The top 10 builders, sponsored this year by Dominion Energy, thank you, is a coveted ranking among members of the Home Building Association of Richmond. Members submit settlement data to determine the rankings. It sounded like a disclaimer, Dana. Number 10, D.R. Horton with 123 units. Number 9, Liberty Homes with 144 units. Number 8, RCI Homes with 149 units. Number 7, Eastwood Homes, 176 units. Number 6, Stanley Martin Homes with 193 units. Number 5, Stylecraft Homes with 203 units. Number 4, Eagle Construction, 209 units. Number 3, Main Street Homes with 321 units. Number 2, H.H. Hunt Homes with 435 units. And finally, number 1, Ryan Homes with 963 units. Now we're going to move on to our top builders for 2020, ranked by dollar volume. Number 10, D.R. Horton, 46 million. Number 9, Craftmaster Homes, 48 million. Number 8, Stanley Martin, 59 million. Number 7, RCI Builders, 60 million. Number 6, Eastwood Homes, 70 million. Number 5, Stylecraft Homes, 75 million. Number 4, Eagle Construction, 114 million. Number 3, Main Street Homes, 140 million. Number 2, H.H. Hunt Homes, 162 million. And finally, number 1, Ryan Homes with 353 million. HBAR compiles an internal sales activity report, known affectionately to most as the Liar's Report. This report is shared among all participating builders. Any HBAR builder member is invited to contribute to this report and receive the report. We find it to be valuable data to gauge the activity in the Richmond region and encourage any builder who is interested to reach out to Dana Markland, our CEO, to get on the list if you're not already on the list and contributing. Thank you all for tuning in to the local forecast seminar. Again, my name is Daniel Jones, the HBAR president. Thank you to Dana, Dr. Elliott, and Elizabeth. The presentation deck by Elliott will be available later today at www.hbar.org. Thank you all for tuning in and enjoy the rest of the year.